In Japanese mythology, Susano, the powerful kami of the sea and storms, is the brother of Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, and of Tsukiyomi, the god of the moon. Susano envied his sister's power over the sun and his brother's power over the moon. Due to his destructive nature, Susano was punished by being banished from heaven. The oldest of Susano's myths tell of his long-standing rivalry between Susano and his sister. As Susano left heaven, he went to tell his sister goodbye. Amaterasu was suspicious, but when Susano proposed a challenge to prove his sincerity, she accepted. Each of them took an object of the others, and from it birthed gods and goddesses. Amaterasu birthed 3 women from Susano's sword, while he birthed 5 men from her necklace. Claiming the gods were hers because they were born of her necklace, and the goddesses were his, he decided that he had won the challenge, as his item had produced women. The 2 were content for a time, but Susano, the storm god, became raged with his victory and went on a murderous rampage, destroying everything in sight. Now, historically, punk has been considered an American and British phenomenon, but the immigration of the genre's anti-establishment spirit to Japan gave Tokyo youth an outlet to rage against the severe economic challenges of the mid-1970s. Around this time, there was a very another prominent anti-establishment women-pushing figure, mangaka Go Nagai. Whether it was Devilman, Violence Jack, or Mazinger Z, Nagai always got into trouble with the PTA and his publishers for his more adult material in shonen magazines. I would consider the 1970s to be Nagai's golden age due to his many successes. Shukan Shonen magazine decided to give Nagai complete freedom of whatever he wanted to do next. When the story of the serialization was brought to him from Kodansha's weekly shonen magazine, the editorial department told Nagai he could draw whatever he pleased. Because of this lack of restriction, Nagai immediately wanted to draw something on a large scale. Nagai wanted to try a different kind of science fiction, one that he had never drawn before. Supernatural science fiction, as he put it into his own words. Nagai thought that psychic powers would be the perfect material for the manga, inspired by the other supernatural stories of his fellow mangaka, Totaro Ichinamori and Osamu Tezuka. In order to increase the scale of his new series, he wanted to intertwine mythical and theological elements. He wanted to base it on the Kojiki, the oldest text in Japan, which is considered to be sacred to the Shinto religion. This work would become to be based on the myth Susano, serialized in Kodansha's weekly shonen magazine in July 1979. Now, Susano Oh is very loosely based on the actual Susano myth, with a lot more violence thrown in for good measure. This is why I bring up the punk attitude of Go Nagai. Susano Oh came out in 1979, which was around the time of Japan's strange crime pandemic. The amount of crimes without any clear motive skyrocketed. I think Nagai puts his attitude of this era into the story, allowing for something completely original and off the wall. The story of Susano Oh is of the high school psychic Shingu Susa. He gets invited by his classmate Sayori to join the school's ESP club. At the beginning of the manga, things are very lighthearted and comedic. They later discover there are 2 real psychics in the school, Chigusa, the beautiful president of the club, and Rei, a resident prodigy who opposes Chigusa and offers to enhance the psychic potential of anyone who follows him. Ryu tries to recruit Susa to his band of sidekicks, but Susa declines out of loyalty for Chigusa. However, it's not until a gang of delinquents assault them where there is a sudden tone shift. The rage of this incident inside the body of Shingo awakens the power of the god Susano. After this moment, more powers start to come into play. Yakuza, a team of evil psychics called Nosferatu, demons, and an Atlantean space force. The creativity is incredible. The story even has a boxing match arc at the midpoint, still with ESP powers. Now, a bit of spoilers, but the story does have an apocalyptic-style ending, somewhat similar to Devilman, and is left open-ended. But there are just many creative concepts and themes thrown into this epic. It really does feel like Nagai going all out. Go Nagai's art style is always kind of very reflective of his stories. Everything is heightened to the extreme, and it makes for some crazy paneling and character designs, very over the top. An example being the very stereotypical punk prominent in this time period. Sometimes there are more realistic looking people or very goofy looking ones. Now, I couldn't find the assistant who works with Nagai on this, but I feel like there definitely had to be one if he was making this on a weekly basis. People like to give Nagai flack for sometimes simplistic caricatures, but it's that contrast with the more cartoony and detailed backgrounds and violence that is what elevates them. The ability to evoke such emotion through the pen strokes and positioning of characters and panels is kind of astounding. The weight of the impact of the punches shown through speed lines and action sequences also have a very powerful effect too. Now, this manga was done a couple years after Devilman, so it's interesting to see the contrast of Nagai's depiction of a demon invasion in both series after the time had passed. Backgrounds and creative mechanical designs toward the end are incredibly impressive. It's very much Nagai in his element. The series won the 4th Kodansha Manga Award the following year of its release. Now, despite Nagai's popularity, this is one of the only awards he ever actually received. Susano Oh's run in Kodansha was actually cancelled in April of 1981. The success of the side novels written by Yatsukata Nagai prompted Kadokawa Shoten to request Go Nagai to resume his work on Susano Oh. In 1985, serialization resumed in the movie information magazine Variety of Kadokawa Shoten was cancelled again in March 1986. But fans still wanted to see the story continue in May 1989, so it was serialized twice in the company's manga magazine Comic Cone for even lower ratings. It resumed in April 1989 in the adult novel magazine Wild Age and was suspended several times. The series was actually quite influential in its own right. Many readers were shocked to see the first rape depiction in a shonen magazine, even having a homage in Berserk years later. Despite the series getting cancelled on and off, it was pretty successful. It received 3 sequels: Susano Oh Densetsu hi Kamiko, Shin Susano Oh, and Susano Oh Densetsu Gaiden. And there was another one called Susano Oh Densetsu Yami no Majinhen. The series also received an RPG game in 1989 for the PC Engine called Susano Oh Legend, which is an alternate take on the manga. Even a board game based on the series called Dreadful Susano Oh King was released. So yeah, Susano Oh is one of Nagai's more underrated series, but it's definitely a great one I'd highly recommend checking out. It's still being re-released today, and with a lot of Go Nagai re-releases, sometimes orders of events will flip around, he'll add new art. So it's one of those series that's still getting traction, and yeah, I highly recommend everyone check it out.